Right, so the next part of the show, we're going to head over to China, and I'd like to welcome Big Sam. Hello, Big Sam. How are you today?
I am a bit tired today, but I'm very well, thank you. How about yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. It's a lovely afternoon here. I've got no idea what time it is over in China.
9 o'clock,
9
9
p.m.
p.m.,
So have you been
21
wrestling
hours.
today?
Yeah. No, I was in the gym and I did a bit of work.
Right.
Nothing too exciting.
Yeah. Right. So I'd like to hear about more about you. So let's go back to the beginning. Um, what actually got you into wrestling?
From a young age, I've always liked wrestling. I mean, 1992 is when I started paying attention to it. I had Sky TV, so I could follow the American Pro Wrestling, WWF, and I got hooked on that with all my friends and followed it all the way through the 90s with the Attitude Era. And then I always said I'd love to have a go at have a try at wrestling. But there was never any pro wrestling schools in the area. However, I got linked into amateur wrestling, freestyle wrestling, the Olympic style wrestling. And that was like kind of a little bit of my foot in the door. So I started doing amateur wrestling and I did that for quite a few years. And then when I was doing that, I told somebody once that, oh, yeah, I do wrestling. And they're like, oh, right, like the pro wrestler. I said, actually, no, I do the freestyle wrestling. He says, oh, but there's a pro wrestling school in Brill, isn't there? And ears lit up. I was like, what? And he says, yeah, there's a pro wrestling school. And basically, this was like really before the internet was taking off. So I had to really try and track it down. And it wasn't like the yellow pages as it is now. Like, where you can find almost anything and anything now on Google. But back then, it was like early days of
Yeah.
Napster. Yeah, so we're trying to find it. And, we're looking through and we managed to get the number. I got the number of Auric Williams. And I ended up calling and I didn't get an answer that time. And then I was looking around as well. So I looked at Hammerlock Wrestling, which was up in Sheffield, which is where my mother's side of the family's from. So I couldn't drive at the time. So I was 16, 17, no, 16, 16. And so I had my dad drive me up there. And he'll go see the family. I did 4 hours of training up at Hammerlock. But yeah, I couldn't do that on a weekly basis. It was a long drive from where we were in the Cheshire North Wales border. So a few years later, I did pass my test driving, and I still carried on with the amateur wrestling, but not at such a big level. And I just started university, and that's when I tried Oregon. This time, he had more of a footprint online, and I could find out where he was training and everything in real. And I gave him a phone call, and I remember I was at my friend's house, and he was very direct. He's like, "How big are you, boy?" And I was like 6'4", and he's like that. And he says, "But are you a beanpole?" Like, as I was asking if I was lanky. And at the time, I think I was about 85, 90 kg, um, so about 200 odd pounds. And he was like, come in anyway. And I went up to Rill, and pretty easy to find. And I was there, and there was another guy. He was new as well, big guy. He was a bouncer and several years older than me. And there was other two younger lads. And we were training in a boxing ring. Now, a boxing ring doesn't have much give compared to a
Yeah,
pro
I've heard
wrestling
about
ring.
that. It's a lot
And I
tougher.
remember he was short, and luckily I knew a bit of bumping from Hammerlock, so I kind of went a little bit top of the class because I was a few steps ahead with the bumping. And then I remember he had us doing like sunset flip bumps into the ring. And I remember I felt my kidneys on every single one bounce when I hit that boxing ring. Anyway, it wasn't so consistent, the wrestling with Orig in real. He was there sometimes, other times he wasn't. And I think this was like around 2005, but don't quote me on that. So I don't think he was in his best stages of his life. I remember he had a walking stick with him at the time. Anyway, MySpace was pretty dominant back then. And I went on MySpace and I remember I found a guy called Joey, tall lad anyway, big lad, and he was wrestling up in Flintshire. And Flintshire was a lot closer to me than Real was. And so I got in touch with him. And to be fair to the guy, he was very welcoming compared to a lot of people I've dealt with. and he told me where to go, and so I met up with him, and he took me to the first time wrestling at Basic in BASIX, Basic Wrestling, and that was in Flintshire. I think it was in Mull, if I
Oh,
remember rightly, at the Leisure
yeah. Do
Centre.
you know if they're still going?
Yes, I do know they're still going. I know they have a ring set up now for training. So I was there for, I can't tell, possibly several months. And that was a really good way to get into wrestling, proper crash course. I really pushed right through with it. They gave me my first show. I think I remember rightly, it was in the village where I was living at the time, called Cly, which is not far from Wrexham. And it was in the Legion pub, the Legion bar, if I remember rightly. And it was a Royal Rumble. And they had all the new guys who this is their footsteps into wrestling was to come into a battle royal, I believe. Yeah, battle royal. Come into the battle royal and basically, um, as a new guy, everyone gives you the chops and the beats downs. Yeah, had a bit of size so I could hold my own a little bit, but yeah, it was. And then after that, fast forward, I ended up coming to China on an exchange program, and there wasn't much pro wrestling at all in China. So I was in China for a few years actually before I found out pro wrestling. And it's when I moved from the middle of China near Shanghai down to the south of China, Shenzhen, which borders Hong Kong. Now, me and my ex-girlfriend went to a comedy club. And at the comedy club, the comedian was an Indian fella who lived in Hong Kong. And he's going around the crowd and he's picking on people in the crowd. And he sees me and he says, "Oh, Hulk Hogan's in the, Hulk Hogan's in the house tonight." And then at the end of the show, anyway, I said to him, I said, "Oh yeah, the Hulk Hogan reference." He says, "Yeah." And he says, "Do you do wrestling?" And I said, "I used to." And that's when it just changed. And he said, "Oh, I used to be the ring announcer for a Hong Kong promotion." And again, my eyes lit up. He says, "Yeah," and he gave me the contact of Ho Ho Lun. Now, Ho Ho Lun, you might have remembered, he was in the WWE Cruiserweight Classic. That was his foot in the door. He was representing Hong Kong in the Cruiserweight Classic 2016, I believe, and he was in that. Anyway, I met Ho Ho way before that, like 2012, and then he introduced me because the geography of China is Hong Kong is part of China, but it's classed as a separate region. And you need to use a passport to get into Hong Kong.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
So I have to do this travel across the border. And he told me about this Chinese wrestler who has a ring and a big setup in mainland China. And that's when I got introduced to a Chinese wrestler who goes by a real original name, The Slam.
The Slam. What a great name.
The Slam, yes. And he is now like kind of seen as like the godfather of Chinese pro wrestling. That's what the nickname is for him. And he had a ring set up. I mean, it was put together pretty sharp. It was it was a pretty good way of putting a ring together, but I don't think it would be approved in the UK or the USA. But we used his ring, and it was just something to really get your foot in the door. But then you saw the difference in styles, even bumping. We were told a different way of bumping in the UK, which I found out the Americans do, but the Chinese the Chinese guys learned by going to Korea, who was taught by I think a Japanese guy who went to Korea to teach wrestling, or a Korean wrestler who went to Japan to teach wrestling, and they were bumping in a completely different way. And so, I was polite, and so I started following their way of doing bumps. I mean, I felt awful on the back the next day after doing it. Like the UK ones, I could do flip bumps and everything, and in China, God, I was bumping and I really coming down on my lower back, and I thought that's not right. You meant to come up on the top of your back and near your shoulder blades. Yeah. Well, anyway, sorry, I'm going on and waddling on a little bit. You can jump in with the questions, by the way.
No, do you know, right? As you're going along, right? It's like you've read my question sheet because you're answering my questions without even me asking them.
That's good then. So when I was 2012 to 2013, I started being more full time, being more regular. Let's use that word better. Regular with the Chinese pro wrestling scene. but it was terrible for fans. They weren't doing big shows or anything like that. And first we were in like a sports centre, a gymnasium, sorry, we're in a gymnasium in a back room. I mean, if you went against the ropes too hard, you'd be dropping out the third window. I mean, and that, not using that as an exaggeration, it was pretty lethal. I mean, health and safety would have a field day if they came over from the UK to China. In China, it's like, oh, you pay, you do it, you take the risk. Anyway, we ended up getting picked up by a so-called wealthy Chinese man, and I think he was all talk. And he had a promotion in Chongqing, and he was very original. He called it CNWWE. I mean, again, he was pretty original with the name, yeah. And so he ended up being a bullshit artist. He ran a couple of shows and he promised to make you all superstars and that. I was still working at the time and I went down on a weekend to wrestle, but there were other guys I know personally who were trying to give it full time with him. One of them, maybe you might know in WWE NXT UK, Sam Gradwell.
To be fair, I don't keep up with WWE anymore.
Well, it's okay. Well, anyway, he was there at the time, and I remember he was having a bit of a nightmare dealing with this Chinese boss because he would constantly go out drinking. I mean, these guys are athletes; they want to go training in the gyms, eat healthy, and he's taking them for hot pot, getting them drunk, putting them in parades and stuff, trying to boost up the company. Then after a couple of shows, he decided to go a bit quiet on the pavement front for a lot of these guys, and they basically packed their bags and left. Long story short. And then he started coming back again, a few months later. I've got the money again. I can run these shows. And again, people started going with him. I didn't this time, but I know some others did. And again, what they say, a cheater doesn't change his spots. He ended up lying to him and screwing over with the guys. And some of these guys had traveled from the UK and the USA. Who was another guy who's in WWE NXT? Zach Gibson. I think he's in NXT now. He's one of the tag team guys. So I'm not sure about the name he uses in WWE, but anyway, he was over there, and again he got bitten. And then fast forward, the Slam contacted me, and I said, "Oh, do you know this American called Adrian Gomez?" And I was like, "No, why?" And he says, "Oh, he's contacted me to run a joint promotion. He's starting a promotion. Can you speak to him? Because the Slam's English wasn't too strong." And I said, "Okay." So I contacted Adrian Gomez, and he was starting a promotion called MKW Middle Kingdom Wrestling. And I got to talk to him. Now, I had just had surgery. As you might have seen, I've got this beautiful scar across my chest. And I tore that by doing some proper ego lifting in the gym. And I lifted 400 plus pounds on the bench, about 180, 190 kg. On the second rep, this muscle, this pec muscle came over here. It had detached itself. So I had a big several hour surgery to have that fixed back to its original place. But that means for almost a year I couldn't exercise and I was stuck very much like this for several months with my arm in like a brace, a sling. So I told Adrian, I said, I'd really like to be part of this. And they had a joint promotion again in a gymnasium in Dongguan. Dongguan is a city above Shenzhen, big industrial area. A lot of small, medium enterprises for anybody who has any interest in that. Anyway, so Adrian ran his first show and he put me in the role of a bodyguard for one of the Chinese heel wrestlers. Because some of the Chinese wrestlers, yeah, protein and gym culture is still taking off here. It's picked up in the last few years, but back then it wasn't so big. So a lot of these guys didn't look too threatening. So they stuck me as like the bodyguard with one of the smaller Chinese guys, and it kind of made a bit of believability when he wins because I'd help him cheat and stuff like that. And then fast forward, when I actually got better into shape, I came back into the wrestling in January 2016 again for Middle Kingdom Wrestling. But by then, MKW had absorbed a lot of the Chinese wrestlers. And then several different promotions pop up in China, and it's very much a promotional pop up, big show, real big show, lose all the money, close. And that's how it really is over here with a lot of the promotions. Yeah. Some promotions now have learnt from their mistakes, but you'll find it's the same guys, but the promotions, the names change. But it's the same people running it. You know, their promotion will go down and they'll flip the name again and they'll run other shows. But with MKW, I got the options to wrestle overseas. Thailand, for example. Uh, Nepal, that was probably one of my best experiences. Japan, that was pretty cool. But Nepal, oh, Korea as well, South Korea. I wrestled over
So
there.
what's the differences
Yeah,
between the wrestling between these locations, these
the
countries?
countries. Okay, in China, I feel China's got the money. And you can see with China, you can have a big presentation.
Right.
If you get a sponsor with you in China, people see my photos of some of the events I've wrestled in China, they think I've made it, and like, you know, like you look like an absolute superstar. And because China's so big,
Yeah.
renting venues as well is really cheap compared to any other place. You go to Japan, and I mean, it's an expensive nation. South Korea, there's a bunch of guys who are doing it themselves, as much as the wrestlers who are doing the promotion. It's not like a separate person who's doing the promotion, it's a wrestler. And they're hot more than the wrestling than running the shows, a lot of these guys.
Right.
And you can see it, you know, and they're working on the budget, a lot of them. They do the best they can.
Yeah.
But with China, if you've got sponsorship and you've got a separate promoter and that, a lot of the back work's done. And when you go there, you see the presentation and you're like, oh wow, we really, you know, the lights are there, the ring aisle, the seating's all set up. It's real delight. It's real good feeling. Now Nepal, bit of a wild story this one. So we're wrestling in Nepal, we're teaming up with a local Maple Leaf promotion. And they got some backing from the local government. Could have been the actual main government if I remember rightly, because we had the acting Prime Minister come to the show. The current Prime Minister was out of the country at the time, so we had the acting Prime Minister in. And we wrestled in a venue that apparently got damaged in the earthquake, and I don't know if it was fully approved to be used.
Yeah.
But I wrestled there, and I believe the numbers there was between 1,500 to 2,000 people in attendance.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I went there, and I was what? Well, I think I was. It was for the main championship, but I was winning the match.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't do that in a ball, so we had to change the order of the matches, where the main event was another match where the local Maple Leaf wrestler ended up winning.
Right. So they
But
so
they
they
put
have
me
to
down like that mid card. As I call it, like the SummerSlam 1992, like Macho Man Ultimate Warrior, banged in the mid card, so Bulldog and Bret Hart, because it was at Wembley Stadium, Bulldog win the Intercontinental Championship, even though it was the secondary belt. Yeah. So I wrestled midway in the show, and the fans. I don't know how much they know about pro wrestling, but they took it legit. And I played a heel as bad guy. Nepal, I was playing this big white colonizer, a little bit white supremacist of a character. And after I beat that guy, cheating, just praying my stable, my faction partner comes down and helps. I got my manager involved. You know, they get wound up.
Yeah.
I was hooking the guy under the ropes, strapped the referee, my manager starts choking this big blue dresser, and the fans are throwing chairs, plastic chairs, and a motorbike helmet comes flying over, and when I was so I beat the guy with a two-shot powder rifle, and he's has a red dot on his head, which is part of the culture, and it's a connection to God.
Yeah.
I whacked it off his head and put it on me. Apparently. Yeah, well, they won't put me as the ambassador, let's put it that way. Oh god, I had even on the foreigners in the corner. Shaking their faces at me. I'm shouting also, I think I got called so many names in other different languages.
Yeah.
Water bottle, but none of them had good shots. I mean,
But that's the best. That's the best kind of heat, though, isn't it? For
I
you?
said to my friend as I was walking out, I've got that like 80s NWA heat now, so I'm probably going to get stabbed in the car park or something. And as we're walking off, I remember one of the things they say is don't grab the women. You know, don't grab
Right.
the women. grabbed the ring announcer to walk off, and the place erupts even more. And we went backstage, and the opponent was there, and he was a really nice guy, real down to earth actually. A local guy called David. Shook his arm, thanked me for the match, said, even though he lost, he felt like he still had that sympathy because the way that we were cheating and stuff. Anyway, I was there was like a heel locker room, faces locker room type of divide. So I'm sitting in the heel locker room, and then some guy comes in and goes, Sam, yeah, you don't want to go out there. I went, why? And I put my head around the corner, and the guy I just wrestled then, his mum is in tears, crying. His dad's there, his fiance's there. She's holding him, hugging him, tears pouring down her face. And I said, should I go and say something? Should I go and say? And the police wrestler who I wrestled, David, goes, and I come over. And we had to try and explain to his mother like it's a show and stuff like this. And she grabs hold of my hand, she's still hugging her son. She's like, it's okay. And I remember I could feel that grip getting harder and harder. And I thought, oh, she is not happy with me. She is definitely not happy with me. And yeah, and at the end, a lot of the wrestlers went out, to say hello to the fans and that. And me and my tag team partner, well, my faction buddy, was told, maybe you stay here. We had like security to take us to like the little bus outside to take us back to the hotel. Oh, I felt proper. I felt like how the heel should have been back in the 80s.
Oh, definitely. That's how the heel should be. You know what I mean? It's great to see the fans get so much involved where they literally do think it's real, so to speak. Well, perhaps some of them do. You just don't know, do you? Right. Let's see. You've answered so many of my questions there. Let's see. What was the most brutal match you have been involved in?
I always played it safe with wrestling. I mean, I don't. Okay, so I talked about a wrestle in Thailand in 2016, and I'll probably send this podcast video to the guy I'm going to talk about. Okay, so I wrestled these two Indian wrestlers. It was a tag team, me and this Chinese guy, the guy I was bodyguarding for back when I was injured, against these two Indian wrestlers who had a promotion. So in Thailand, there was multiple promotions coming together, and there was a bit of a booking fiasco. They thought they should have won. We're like, well, we were told we were going to win. They were like, yeah, yeah. And so I like tried to make peace, and I did it in a diplomatic way. I said, okay, so at the end of the match, we're the heels, remember this. So at the end of the match, we win, and we'll do everything to cheat, make you guys look strong, because these Indians are very proud. We go back. Oh, I wanted the accent. We go back to our country. Will be disliked. People will be very angry. And I said, oh, well, at the end, how about you leave us laying or something like that? We'll try and jump you, and you can do your big moves on us and leave us out. Okay. Well, they agreed to that. Okay. And now we wrestled during a rough time because the king of Thailand had just passed away. And so that really affected ticket sales. But what happened was we had uh, tour groups coming to the venue, and a lot of them were Chinese. And they don't care about heel or face. They see a Chinese guy who's my tag team partner, who's doing everything Dick Dastardly, yeah, and he's getting cheered because all the Chinese are loving their guy. They don't care what he's doing as long as he's one of theirs. He's their blood.
Right.
And and just by association, they start cheering me as well. And we're doing like all this heelish stuff, and they're loving it. But the Indians, they hit hard. They're pretty, stiff. They're very stiff with their strikes.
Yeah.
And I remember they had me in the corner, like stomping in the corner.
Yeah.
They were stomping me, and one of the guys was a little bit careless. And he caught me a few times in the head, and I had lumps the next day in my head. But I remember, like, to slow it down, I gave him a hard clothesline and opened his bottom lip. And, he's like saying to me Wednesday, Tuesday, Friday,
Yeah.
about what am I doing, and I said, just slow it down. And he was all right after that because he said, oh, at least it looked good because it was stiff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one match I walked away and I felt quite a bit. Plus, we were wrestling if I remember, it was Thai boxing ring, and they put some little mats to try and make it soft, but there was no give. When I got suplexed, I felt my liver and kidneys. That was, yeah, probably the roughest match I've had.
Yeah, that's good. So you've
Yeah.
never been seriously hurt during a match.
No, I've almost seriously hurt somebody. That's probably, I'll have to send you that video clip.
So again, you've seriously hurt somebody. Have
Oh,
you?
one guy, yeah, he took a choke slam really wrong. If he had done the original move I wanted to do, he probably would have been in a much better place. One of the moves I do a military press,
Yeah.
and I drop the guy behind me, and they do
Right.
a front bump, and then
Yeah.
I'll drop down to the knee and do the pose. And he's like, no, no, no. He went up in the air during when we were going through a bit of practice, and he's like, oh, that's too high. He says, I'm falling from 7 foot. He says, just hit me with a choke slam. Okay. I've hit the choke slam many times before, no problem. And this guy, he's fairly new as well, and he wanted to kind of prove himself, which is a nice way. But as he went up for the choke slam, he flipped himself,
Right.
and he came down on the back of his neck. I'll have to send you the video clip after this chat.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, my heart stopped. I thought, oh no, and I pinned him and he kicked out. Because I thought I'll just end it quickly. And he kicked out, and then he kept saying to me, power bomb, which is like my finisher. Like I gave him like the softest power bomb, and he kicked out again. And he goes again. I thought he's trying to make his character really strong now. And then I had to come down with the power bomb, and I pinned him. I'm like, stay down, stay down.
Got to admit, he was very, very lucky there because you know I've heard of some wrestlers that just take normal soft bumps and they've ended up paralysed.
He went to the hospital and everything, and he came back and he was actually okay. He just, oh, you see the landing, it looked rough.
Oh yeah, definitely have to have a look at that footage, and if you know if we can, we will definitely show the viewers.
Show it, show it. I put it on Instagram anyway.
Perfect reason not to copy things and do them at home, isn't it? Really.
Oh, it's very much like that. Yeah, yeah.
You'd have been over in China during the COVID then, wouldn't you?
Kept me here for 3 years. Yes, it was my first time back to the UK this past
All right.
summer.
What was it? What was the wrestling like over there when COVID hit? Because you know, pretty much here it stopped. In America, they started only doing empty arenas.
We were going down a certain path that way. So with Middle Kingdom Wrestling, they ran TV tapings, and they had a selective crowd of maybe 10 to 20 people, and they were and it was in an old bar where they had like rafters, and the fans would sit up on the rafters and the rings down at the bottom. So when you watch the footage, you can hear them.
Yeah, but you can't see them.
But you don't see them. And so we wrestle like we would record 2 to 3 shows a day. So I could be involved in 2 to 3 matches a day. But again, it's pretty hard when you don't have that crowd to really feed off or anything like that. Especially my character. My character is all crowd work. I am literally all. I mean, I got 5 moves, and the rest of the stuff is all work in the crowd.
See, did you have the problem of with it being so quiet and no one really there that when you're filming the wrestling, you can hear the wrestlers give instructions to the other wrestlers?
Well, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't too bad that way. No, we had like 10 to 20 people who were drinking, so you could hear them shouting some random comments and like that. Yeah, hit him in the penis and stuff like that, but they used a different word.
See, I watched one of the matches that you sent me, and I take it a lot of them can't really speak English, but yet they do know shut the up. Because I got shouted quite a lot through the match.
Yes, well, the Hong Kong matches, it's a former colony of the UK, so a lot of the locals know English.
Oh right, that's my ignorance there.
They're a Hong Kong crowd is probably the smart of the wrestling crowds.
Yeah.
They stay up to date with what's going on in the other promotions on TV and stuff like that. Like WWE and AEW and the stuff in Japan and New Japan Pro Wrestling and stuff. They follow that. They're pretty up to date, so they know all the chants and stuff.
Oh yeah. So you've been wrestling for pretty much what, half your life or something now. What's the
on and off.
So
I did it 2007. I did it for let's put it round up to a year or so. And then I had a 5 year, 4 or 5 year gap, picked it up around contacts about 2011, 2012. 2013 started being more regular with it. And then again, it's in waves with the wrestling scene in China. It really,
Yeah.
like that. Like, probably the best year was 2018 for me. That's when I was probably my busiest.
What is it you
Sorry.
enjoy the most about the wrestling world? Being part of the wrestling world?
This is going to sound so cliche, but the crowds. I really feed off the crowds.
Yeah.
I made that more of my attention. Like they say, there's two types of wrestlers. There's a wrestler who wrestles for the other wrestler. He'll go out there and do every single move off the video game. He'll do absolutely anything. Top rope hurricane rana. He'll Canadian destroyer, does absolutely 400 moves in a match, and he'll ask what the wrestlers thought of him. And then you'll get me, who will do a backbreaker, one simple backbreaker, and I'll milk it
Yeah.
for like most of the match. And the other wrestlers like, oh, you're a bit slow, a bit like this, but the fans all remember how I won the match. They remember my pose. They remember the interactions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Throw up a Chinese guy in the air in a military press, lands down, and I should go, thank you for flying British Airways. The crowds all laugh about stuff like that, especially because I'm overseas.
Yeah.
And they know that that's the national airline of the UK, yeah. So it plays to that.
Oh, definitely. It's brilliant. Right, so we're going to come to the end of this interview. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us. Few hiccups at the beginning, but we got it sorted. Let's see. I'm pretty sure as a wrestler you've been asked the same questions pretty much over and over again, which is probably why I didn't actually need to ask you any of my questions. You just you just answered them straight away. But I did put it to the viewers to come up with some questions that you probably have never been asked before. So I've actually got 3 questions here. So let's see. What is it that you keep wanting to smell even though it doesn't smell particularly good? So what's a smell that's a horrible smell, but you'd like to smell it? It's a bit like some people like smelly feet, some people like petrol.
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 I was just going to go with petrol. Petrol is actually one thing that I really like the smell of.
Yeah. You're not the only one. My missus there is laughing away because she does exactly the same. Is that a question that you've never been asked before?
No, I've never been asked, do I like the smell? But I've been asked before, do I like the smell of petrol? And I said, surprisingly, I do, yeah.
A lot of people do.
I know some people get a headache from it.
Yeah, oh, definitely. It does with me. The
Cigars as well.
No, I can't do cigars. No.
A cigar, proper good cigars, a good smell to it. And I know some people turn their nose up at it, but I think they turn their nose up at the fact it's smoking.
Yeah.
Not the actual smell.
Right. Here's another one for you. When was the last time you screwed anything up and nobody noticed?
I screwed somebody.
No, screwed something up, messed something up, and nobody even noticed that you made that mistake.
Okay, probably today. I hit it well, even though someone tried to point it out, and I said, no, this is how it's done. I wrote colour the American way, COLOR, instead of COLOUR.
Right.
And the racist says, how you spell colour? I went, yeah, it's the American way. But I was actually explaining something in English to him, like British English. I hid it that way. So yes, that's probably the last time I've done something. That was today, actually. That was crossed my mind, actually. I was in the gym. I was like, I wonder if that person's actually going to go back and research to see if I did my mistake.
Well, he might be watching
this. He just went with it afterwards.
Right. Yeah. So your last question. Hopefully you've never been asked this one before. What would you do if you could replace all the grass on the planet with something else?
Wildflowers.
You'd change grass for flowers?
Wildflowers.
Yeah, wildflowers.
Well, I'm pretty big on the world and how we're on a downfall. And wildflowers bees love it, and then we need the bees to survive.
Well, absolutely. They're on a downcline, aren't
Yeah.
they? You know, they're going extinct now. Believe it or not, bees.
Well, that's why they need to put these like type of wildflowers in and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, most
'Cause,
definitely. Right. It's been
yeah. I know it's
absolutely.
a boring answer. I know it's an absolute boring answer, but
It's all
yeah.
right.
But
You know. It's
no,
so. How well did our viewers do with those questions there?
absolutely. I'll give you a 7 out of 10 for that. To be honest, I was not expecting that. I thought they were going to ask me something about China, like what food would you eat in China, or what do you do? No, no, I got asked like, do I like smelly feet or whatever that question was.
Well, yeah, well, I did put it to the viewers to come up with questions that you'd probably never been asked before, and, you know, I think they got those ones. So, we're coming to a close now, so I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully you'd like to come back on.
You
Right,
can't complain. Yeah, I'd love to come back on.
fantastic. So,
Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me get my story out there.
you're very welcome. Are you wrestling at all today, or are you having the rest of the evening off?
I've got a show in Hong Kong, September the 23rd.
Right, well, for
At
anyone
the
that's
Hong
watching
Kong
the Hong
Football
Kong,
Club.
would you like to plug it? Dates, times,
Well,
prices?
yes. So anybody there who's in the Hong Kong area or in the South China region, in the Guangzhou region, who can make themselves to Hong Kong, we will be wrestling September the 23rd in Hong Kong at the Hong Kong Football Club.
Fantastic. And how much would that cost?
I totally forgot the ticket prices, but I think it's about 400 Hong Kong dollars upwards. So it's about, give or take, 30, 40 quid upwards.
Oh, right, so it's reasonably priced.
I don't know what the prices are now in the UK for a wrestling show. Was it like kids for free or something, and £10 or £20 entry?
I don't know. A lot of the promotions are actually struggling around here. So you know they're putting buy one get one offer. You know your family tickets for, I think, about 30 quid, and it's about 7 quid for an adult and 6 quid for a child, something like that. That's not including the WWE and AEW. God knows what kind of prices they charge.
Well, they had that big show, didn't they, in Wembley about a week or so ago.
Yeah, they were in Cardiff as well. AEW, WWE was in Cardiff, and AEW is coming round here
The
somewhere,
Cardiff
I
one
think.
was Clash of the Castle, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, a few friends of mine back in the UK went to that show.
All right, yeah. See, the thing is, I lost interest in WWE many years. It's probably when Mick Foley left. He was my favourite wrestler, and as soon as he went, it wasn't really the same. He ended up with
My favourite wrestler has always been Sid Justice.
Sid Justice, yeah. Well, wasn't he Sid Vicious as well at one point when he turned heel?
When he first started, wasn't he? In NWA, WCW, Sid Vicious, went to WWF, and became Sid Justice. Then Psycho Sid.
Psycho Sid, yeah, I remember
Yeah.
Psycho Sid, yeah. I think we're showing our age there, to be fair. You know, I think the first one I watched was WrestleMania 6 with Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior.
And 1 year after, no, WrestleMania 8. Hulk Hogan versus Sid Justice in the main event.
Right.
Yes. And my friend who introduced me to pro wrestling, he was a Hulkamaniac. I was on Team Sid. I thought Sid just big blonde haired guy, and he came out the serious face, had the little manager, Harvey Whippleman, and he did the power bomb, which is the move I use now as my finisher.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I'm going to leave you to it now. I'd like to just thank you once more.
All right then. Well, thank you very much.